Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really common criticism you hear about religious faith.
Ah, the old crutch argument. Yeah, that one comes up a lot.
Exactly. The idea that faith is just, a psychological prop for people who can't handle life.
Right, that it implies some kind of fundamental weakness.
But the source material we're diving into today, it's basically a set of notes, a reflection that flips that completely on its head.
Okay, so it's a counter-argument.
A detailed one. It argues faith isn't weakness at all, but, and I'm quoting here, the strength of walking in God's perfect way. It even points to Psalm 18.30.
God's way is perfect. He is a shield. Yeah, that sets a very different tone. Not a crutch, a shield.
Precisely. So our mission today is to unpack how this source reframes strength, reliance, the whole picture.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, let's set up the tension first. Why does our culture, especially maybe Western culture, see dependence as inherently weak? We love the idea of the self-made person, right?
Absolutely. Self-reliance is lionized. So leaning on anything external, especially something unseen like God, just reads as failure, lack of grit.
Yeah, something like that.
And the author of these notes, they jump right into that. They basically say, hold on, is anyone truly self-reliant when the big storms hit?
They don't deny the struggle then.
Not at all. They acknowledge the accusation, you only believe because you can't cope. But then they universalize the need. They say, look, nobody handles everything alone.
Right. The source argues that things like serious illness, deep grief, constant temptation, fear, guilt, these things hit everyone. Rich, poor, educated, influential, doesn't matter.
Exactly. These are battles that sheer willpower often just can't conquer. So the source argues, since everyone ends up depending on something.
The real choice isn't if you depend, but what you depend on.
Precisely. Which leads nicely into our first segment, sort of the foundation, admitting need.
Okay, so the world says admitting need is weakness. How does the source reframe it?
As honesty and even wisdom. Yeah. If we're honest, everyone relies on things. Friends, money, routines, maybe substances, medication. The list goes on. So admitting you need help, especially ultimate help, isn't being weak. It's just being realistic about, the human condition.
Okay, I see the honesty part. But why wisdom? If I rely on my, say, solid retirement fund, isn't that wise too?
Well, the source would argue that the fund or the friend or the routine, they're all fallible, right? They can fail. The wisdom, according to this perspective, lies in choosing an anchor that doesn't fail.
Ah, so choosing God is presented as wise because of the reliability factor. Based on that Psalm 18 promise, again, perfect, proven true.
Exactly. It's just the focus from dependency is bad to choosing the right dependency is smart. You're opting for the most reliable anchor available.
Okay, that makes sense. So admitting need is step one. The source then tackles the blind faith criticism, right? Trusting what you can't see.
Yes, the idea that faith is weak because it's just believing without evidence, blind trust.
And how does the source counter that? Because that feels like a pretty strong objection.
It uses these really grounded everyday analogies.
Yeah.
It points out that actually our whole lives run on unseen trust.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, like the air we breathe. We don't see it, but we trust it's there constantly. Or the electricity in the walls, flip a switch and trust it'll work. We don't see the electrons flowing.
Okay. Or even just sitting in a chair, trusting physics will hold us up.
Right. And even bigger picture. We plan for the future, don't we? We invest time, money, effort into a future we absolutely haven't seen and can't guarantee.
That's true. It's all based on projection and trust in systems or patterns.
So the source says, look, faith operates on a similar principle of trust, but the object of trust is different. It's not fallible human systems or speculative futures, but God's promises, which, from this viewpoint, never break.
So faith isn't presented as blind at all, but as, what was the phrase? The clearest vision of all.
Yeah, because it's supposedly seeing and relying on the most reliable reality, even if it's spiritual, not material. It totally reframes what seeing and certainty mean.
Okay, that's a powerful setup. Which brings us to the core of these notes, the 6 reversals.
Right, taking things the world calls weak and defining them as strong.
We've touched on admitting need and unseen trust. What's the 3rd reversal?
Forgiveness is power.
Now that seems counterintuitive. Strength is usually about fighting back, holding your ground, getting justice, maybe even revenge. How is letting go powerful?
Well, the source focuses on the internal dynamics. It argues that holding on to bitterness, grudges, the desire for revenge, that stuff actually enslaves you.
Like it takes up mental energy, emotional space.
Exactly. It kind of poisons you from the inside. The source says it takes far more strength, more internal discipline, to actively choose to let go of that, especially when the hurt is justified, than it does to just simmer in resentment.
So forgiveness isn't passive acceptance, it's an active act of self-liberation.
That's the idea. And the ultimate example given is Jesus on the cross praying, "Father, forgive them." That's presented not as weakness, but as incredible controlled strength.
Okay, I can see that. Winning the internal battle, not just the external one. What's reversal number 4?
Obedience is courage.
Another tricky one. Obedience often gets painted as, well, spineless, just following rules, not thinking for yourself.
Yeah, the blind follower critique.
Isn't there a risk there? That kind of obedience could lead to dogmatism, which doesn't feel like strength?
It's a fair question, but the source adds crucial context. The obedience described here isn't just mindless rule following. It's the courage needed to go against the prevailing current.
Against the current. How so?
Well, think about cultural pressures. Self-interest, consumerism, do whatever feels good. Choosing a path defined by, say, biblical morality, service, restraint. That often means resisting strong cultural tides, maybe even pushback from friends or family.
Oh, okay. So it's easier to just blend in, compromise, go with the flow.
Right. Standing firm, being distinct in your choices because of your faith commitment, that requires real backbone. It's courage, not conformity.
Internal resistance again. Makes sense. That leads into the 5th one.
It does. Humility is controlled strength.
Humility. Yeah, the world definitely sees that as weakness, like thinking less of yourself, being a doormat.
And the source offers a really important clarification on the definition. It says humility is not thinking less of yourself.
It's thinking of yourself less. I've heard that before. It's good.
It really is. And the source labels it strength under control.
Strength under control. I like that. How does it contrast with pride in these notes?
Pride is painted as destructive. It isolates you, makes you defensive, blinds you to your own faults, builds walls. Humility, on the other hand, builds bridges. It allows you to learn, to admit mistakes, to receive help, to let, well, the source says, God's grace flow.
So pride makes you rigid and brittle, while humility makes you adaptable and ultimately stronger.
That's the argument. Keeping your ego in check, managing your own power and abilities without arrogance, that's presented as a higher, more disciplined form of strength.
Okay, which brings us to the final reversal, number 6.
Surrender is winning.
Right, this feels like the ultimate paradox, surrendering to God. That sounds like giving up, losing control, defeat.
It sounds like it. But again, the source reframes it. It's presented not as defeat, but as a decisive, strategic victory.
Wow.
The logic connects right back to Psalm 18. His way is perfect. The argument is, if God's way is perfect and our ways are, well, flawed, finite, often messy.
Then surrendering your flawed plan for his perfect one is actually the smartest move.
Exactly. It's recognizing the limits of your own strength and wisdom and choosing to align with something infinitely greater. It's not losing, it's upgrading. It's choosing the superior strategy.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together. We've walked through these 6 reversals: admitting need, unseen trust, forgiveness, obedience, humility, surrender, all things the world often dismisses as weak.
And the source systematically argues they are, in fact, the very definition of inner strength, wisdom, and even strategic power, when understood in this faith context. The real weakness, from this perspective, is clinging to flawed self-reliance, bitterness, pride, and our own limited plans.
It completely flips the script on what power looks like.
It does. And there's a great visual metaphor the source uses to nail this down. It says, trusting God is not a crutch.
Right, you mentioned that earlier. Not a crutch, but
A shield. Think about it. A
Yeah.
crutch is passive. You lean on it because you're broken, you can't stand alone.
Okay.
A shield, that's active. It's defense. It's something you wield while you're moving forward, while you're engaged in the fight. It enables your strength. It doesn't just compensate for weakness.
Ah, that's a critical distinction. Reliance becomes readiness, protection, not just passive support.
Exactly. And that metaphor leads directly into the practical advice for you, the listener. If someone hits you with that faith is just a crush line, how should you respond, according to the source?
Do you whip out the 6 reversals and debate them?
Actually, no. The advice is much more subtle. It suggests not getting defensive or angry.
Okay, then what?
It simply says, you don't need to defend yourself in anger. You just need to walk in the quiet confidence that comes from genuinely believing God is your shield.
So let your life be the argument.
Pretty much. The idea is that the resilience, the peace, the ability to forgive, the humility, that strength, which comes from an external source, becomes evident over time. It's a strength that self-reliance alone often can't explain.
The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Let the results speak for themselves.
That seems to be the core advice.
This has been really insightful, taking that common criticism and just dismantling it piece by piece, offering a completely different framework for understanding strength.
Yeah, the notes definitely provide a coherent way to see things like dependence, forgiveness, and humility, not as liabilities, but as actual sources of wisdom and resilience.
So, to leave you, our listener, with something to think about, a final question drawn directly from this material. Which of these qualities the world often calls weak, admitting need, faith in the unseen, forgiveness, obedience, humility, or surrender, has actually, in your own experience perhaps, proven to be your greatest strength?
That's a great question for reflection. Thanks everyone for tuning into this deep dive.
Until next time.